Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. Lawyers who read wills to families. What is the most interesting, bizarre, offensive, surprising thing you have had to read out loud? To my daughter Anne, who created my beautiful granddaughter Jane, and her dear fourth husband John, who laid hands on my Jane, I leave $1 you money grubbing bastards. To Jean I'll leave all of my monetary assets, save $5,000 and my best gun which I'll leave to my son Bill, on the condition that he beats John bloody during the time between my funeral and my burial. Jane, bail your uncle out of jail, please, other than names. This is the exact wording of a great uncle's will, part of it anyway. At age 9 Jean told her mother that John had molested her and her mother told her she deserved it for being a slut. So great uncle took Jean in and raised her, and his 2 kids got exactly what it says. His son also got a truck and technically a house, although he only kept it until Jean was a legal adult and could afford the tax on it. Bill got full custody of Jean when his father died and he put every penny of her money into a trust fund to mature when she was 25 because he felt like his sister would try to get the money. He was right, and in case anyone wondered, yes, Bill got his $5,000. He didn't get arrested though because John had a warrant on him so they didn't dare call the cops. Bill did kindly inform the police of his whereabouts a few weeks later. That is beautiful. Something about revenge from beyond the grave, or at least on the way to it. Yep, he was a ornery old fart. My cousin Jane is just like her grandfather too. If she likes you she will move heaven and earth to make you happy or help you. If you slight her, she will do the same to see you suffer. Thankfully we get along great. Well enough that she read that part of the will over the phone to me so I could contribute. Jane sounds ducking awesome. Buy Jane a drink and some cupcakes for me. When I was a clerk in law school at the State Court of Appeals, the adult children of a rich woman tried to invalidate the will. Basically the woman was worth about $8 million and all the children were working professionals earning 6 or 7 figures. Well, the woman had used the same hairdresser for multiple years and left a considerable amount in a trust for the hairdresser's children's education. The remainder of the estate was given to different charities. Basically the kids were mad they didn't get a cut. Edit. A lot of people asking how it turned out. Truth is I don't know. We remanded on some procedural issues and I never followed up on it. Haha. Didn't get a cut. I see what you did there. She left her entire shavings to the hairdresser and others. Edit. And my highest rated comment is a pretty bad pun. Slow down there, Sean Connery. I once had to tell the son of the deceased that his mother's priceless boy with apple painting was willed to a hotel concierge. Edit. Spelling. The concierge was probably sleeping with her. I go to bed with all my friends. Pay attention. Prevail. And I'll tell you the tale of a lodging and lobby as fine as can be, of a last will and testament destined to fail, of my darling dear Agatha, Gustave, and me. On the eve of a war in Zerbauka I sat with the charming monsieur as he whispered, bereft, in the dark of his room with the deputy's cat, of the Lady Caroline, and the painting she left. So we did what was right, and we tethered it tight, and he made me his heir, and we skipped and we ran. And we stowed it away in the dead of the night to the Grand Budapest, where our journey began. My estate planning professor told us about a guy who had 2 families, neither of which knew about the other until it was time to read the will. This wasn't like a love child mistress type scenario. Both were nuclear multi-kid families. Both families showed up for what had to be one of the most awkward will reading in history. I don't really know how he pulled it off other than that he was away on business frequently. I don't know how it happens either, but it must be more frequent than expected. Before I got married my wife mentioned that she had an uncle with 2 families that found out about each other after her uncle passed. Fast forward 8 years, we decide to go on a holiday to the UK for a holiday and meet up with her family on one of the days. The next day, another set of cousins come by and I made the social gaffe of assuming they were the family of a different uncle. Nope, this was the second family. To be fair, I don't think you prepare for these kinds of situations. I presume there's a liquor store within 20 miles of most will readings. In my trusts and estates class in law school, we read a case about a man who left everything to his wife, but only if she got his body stuffed and left it on the living room couch forever. Luckily for her, The court invalidated that part of the husband's will. If I recall correctly, part of the reasoning was that it would make it impossible for her to remarry if she had her husband's creepy dead body glaring at anyone who came to see her. I'm going to have my husband do this when I die, except I want to be done up more like one of those standing stuffed polar bears you see clawing and snarling. Call Chuck Tester first. Now that's a meme we haven't seen in a while. We had a client itemize his rock collection in his will, including directions that certain rocks be deposited in certain rivers across Canada. Edit. Apparently I need to start watching this Breaking Bad show. They're minerals. Jesus Christ Marie. I hope he was a geology prof and did it just to duck with future grad students working on their theses. Edit. Grammar. I like rocks, not English. I know. No lawyer here, but I had to share. A woman came in after her mother's funeral with some correspondence from the company I work for, insurance. She was worried there was a bill she needed to pay and was coming to tell us her mom had died. She just looked so tired, and we got to talking while I looked up the policy to close it out. She shared that in the last few years her mom had slipped into dementia and she single-handedly took care of her. How she missed her but just was run ragged and she hadn't taken a vacation in forever. I realized what she had was not a health policy. It was a life insurance policy naming the daughter as the beneficiary for about $50,000. I told her and she just started crying. It made me cry and I got up and hugged her and sort of just held her while she cried. She pulled away and said, "I have no idea what she left that for. Everything's been paid for." I said, "This might be her telling you to go on that vacation and relax." It was so touching. And she had no idea that the policy existed. Edit. Thanks for the gold. : I was expecting something opposite of this happening. Thanks for sharing. This made my evening. I used to work for an accountant and we used to make wills as well. An old man probably around 70 left all his money to his mistress while his wife only got the goldfish. I had to tell him that if his wife contested it she would most definitely win. He said he didn't care. Edit. Used to use X2. If there is a lawyer on this forum, can you please answer some of these questions? We did a little section on law while doing my accounting degree and to my knowledge the wife has a high chance of winning the case. Example, if all he had was furniture in the house and the house itself, then the wife would get it all regardless of what the will said. Just to clear up confusion, I'm for Australia not USA. I thought it was in there but it wasn't. Goldfish. The estate that smiles back until you bite their heads off. Well, at least he left his wife all the gold. Lawyer here. I once amended a will for a doctor in which he disinherited his son by removing everything he had intended to bequeath and replacing it with a manure spreader. I didn't ask any questions because changing a will is an easy thing to do. But one day, the doctor will die and his son will have essentially be told to eat shit. We had a client who was a widowed farmer who owned several heavy equipment, Caterpillar trucks, etc. He had 2 sons who were already working with him at the farm and a daughter who was working in the city. He willed the heavy equipment to the daughter. When asked why, since these equipment were essential to the farm, he said that the farm was to go his kids equally, but his girl needed to know he always wanted her to join their venture and dispel her notions of alienation because she was the girl. When my grandfather, an independent miner, passed, he left all his equipment to myself, brother, uncle and father. The land that the mine was on was left to my sister, my aunts and my cousin. The reasoning is that the company built us, and we were all in it together. We spread his ashes at the mine when he passed, and left the little copper canteen of his under an old pine tree near the mine. Sometimes I take my lunch break and sit next to the canteen and talk to him. I miss you. Pop-up. Sorry, that got kind of emotional and sappy. Whoa, this kind of blew up. Thanks for listening to me, boys and girls. Thanks for a gold. Guess I'm a gold and a coal miner now. This is weird and sweet. Every girl needs a Yamaha tree moto from early cycle centers. Not me, but my friend's father's father died and he said when the guy reviewed the will with his lawyer and his sister, it said to give 100% of the assets to his sister. He said he had no idea why his father did that. He wasn't on bad terms or anything. It was shocking to him. The sister didn't share anything with him either, and they were on pretty good terms before that. So many good family relationships break completely because of these things. It's so sad to see how important materialistic value is to some people and how it can overpower years and years of emotional ties. Obviously it can create high frictions, but the sheer selfishness of some people after a loved one's death astonishes me. My mother doesn't talk to her brother anymore because of this. Towards the end of my grandmother's life, she started to develop dementia. My uncle took advantage of this and brought her to an estate attorney to change her will. All of her assets were left to him. I didn't even care about getting money. I just wanted the family recipes that she may have written down. He wouldn't even give me that. Last I heard through the grapevine from relatives, he got married and got a new job. I don't want to wish any ill on him, but it's hard to not feel bitter when he's enough of a dong to not even give his only niece goddaughter recipes he won't even use. You can have some of my family recipes. It's not the same, but if you like Italian food and cake, edit. Okay, you guys want recipes. I've got them. Give me a few days to type everything up, and I'll post them. I'm also going to call my grandma and see if she's got anything good hidden away. Double edit. Gold. Row. Thanks. I've got 2 done already, but it's time to cook dinner now. Third edit. Okay, so basically this is fun, and I made a subreddit so we can all do this, since people have been saying they want to share too. My first post is up over on r/family recipes now. Oh dear. My first not me but a friend post. Someone had left an entire golf course that he owned and managed in secret to his son. They were avid golfers, but always went to another course. I still don't know why someone would lie about owning a golf course. Some people like surprises. I'd be thrilled if my dad had been hiding a golf course from me for all these years as a big reveal when he died. I would just be like, why could we never go there together? Because that's where I take the kids of my other family, and I didn't want you two to run into each other. I know you're looking for lawyers and whatnot, but here, have my mediocre will story anyway. My great grandmother left her daughter just $1 and not a single penny more, so help me God. This was before I was born. But my grandmother, not the daughter with the dollar, said that when they all read the will her sister had a full-blown temper tantrum and no one heard from her since. I guess she had it coming. Sounds like Ma knew what she was doing. From all of the stories I've heard, yep, she totally did. She seemed pretty badass. I even named my daughter after her. And how is little Gertrude Virginia Maud today? To my wife I'll leave her lover and the knowledge that I was never the fool she thought me. To my son I'll leave the pleasure of working for a living. For 25 years, he thought the pleasure was all mine. Best diss ever was in my wills and trusts book in law school as an example of people talking shit in their wills. You're supposed to discourage them as lawyers from doing so. That's so classy, though. It's probably the best diss I've ever heard read. Extremely well spoken, underhanded, in the best possible context, all while being seemingly totally appropriate, considering the allegations, and mature with the ultimate final word. Yeah, I'd make a bad lawyer. As your lawyer, I'd advise that burn was totally sick. Join our community Discord, link in description. It's very rare to read a will out loud. That's mostly in the movies. Normally I just make extra copies and pass them out to whoever in the family wants to read it. Edit 1. Though the most unusually thing in a will I saw was man leaving a good chunk of money for his mistress that wife knew nothing about. It was interesting to see sadness and anger fighting to win in the wife. She finally laughed and said, what a mother ducker. Speaking as an actual estate attorney, thank you for pointing out that this is basically a Hollywood myth. If I had $1 for the number of people who call me wanting to sue because there was never a reading of the will, it went something like this. Frank, if your fat monkey heart is still beating, then congratulations. I want you to know that I hereby leave all of your money to Bruce Mathis, the real father of my children, a handsome man with a beautiful soul and a nicer penis. For my darling son Dennis, I give you my house on the sole condition that Frank is not be allowed in. Deandra, you get nothing. The real father turned out to be a bit of a freak. A friend of mine was adopted at birth. When her mom died, the will gave half the estate to her 2 natural daughters. My friend got nothing. WTF. That was vindictive beyond belief. It's like saying, yeah, I raised you, but you were never truly my child. Yep, friend didn't really understand it. She was so hurt. Her mother never talked to her any differently than her sisters. Never told people she was adopted or anything. So it was a punch to the gut for her. As someone who was adopted at birth myself, this would hurt more than anything. Please, love all your kids equally. If you can't, someone will. I don't remember enough of the story, but there was a guy in the 1800s that left his estate to his great-grandchildren because he didn't want his actual children to benefit at all. I think they only recently received the money. Edit. Also, I don't think any actual lawyers can answer this because if it was bizarre enough to be noteworthy, they'd be giving up attorney-client privilege. Edit 2. Thanks to you/Ukrainian Reaper Daily Mail Co UK link. Boom. Here you go. I delivered the newspaper to John Lightsall from the article. He actually went by Jack. But whatever. He had money of his own. He had a rather large piece of land in the middle of town, surrounded by schools and neighborhoods. He donated pieces of his land to the private school that backed up to his property. Then when he passed away, he had the school the rest. Really nice guy. He always invited me in and offered me something to drink when I would stop by to collect payment for the paper. He tipped me well, and was always very appreciative for the service I provided. It was very interesting to find out he was linked to such an obscure story. My maternal grandpa was wealthy. He divorced my maternal grandma, remarried, and promptly dropped dead of a heart attack. He was only 48 and had no will, so everything went to his new wife, my mom's stepmother. She was actually really nice and was planning on making sure that everything was fair, till she died in a car accident 6 months later. She was a widow herself prior to marrying grandpa and had a now orphaned 15-year-old son from the previous marriage who got everything. My mom and her siblings had to go to the auction at their childhood home and buy back as much of their heirlooms and memories as they could afford, and, truthfully, stole some of what they couldn't. Edit I know words. Kind of reminds me of the story of the guy who met a bombshell girl in a bar. He said, my father is 98 years old and is a billionaire. He will be dead within a month. We should get married. The next day she became his stepmother. My father-in-law was an accountant for some rather wealthy people. One of them was asking him to assist with writing up his will worth millions. The final addition he suggested was that if the children contested it, they get nothing. They contested it for years. The final addition he suggested was that if the children contested it, they get nothing. Yowza. My crazy mom did this to me. She left her house to her eldest grandson, my nephew, dribs and drabs of cash to her other grandkids, the amount depending on how much he liked them, a big wad of cash to my erratic alcoholic brother, and a few thousand to me, with the caveat that if I contested my share or any aspect of the will, I was to get nothing. Mom pretty much had it in for everyone. I had my own attorney evaluate the will and he said it was legally hilarious and definitely vulnerable to challenge, but it would take a lot of time and money. I ultimately said the hell with it. I walked away with my few $1,000 and got on with my life. The nephew who was bequeathed the house renounced the will, as he was still in college, applying for grants and scholarships, and owning a $500,000 piece of property would have wrecked his fiscal profile. He also hated the house and everything about it. My erratic alcoholic brother moved into the place, spent all mom's money, ran up an astonishing amount of new debt using the house as collateral, and drank himself to death in 2 years flat. His equally erratic wife died less than a year after that. The bonuses. As I wrap this up, I have to work with the lawyer who wrote mom's evil, divisive will in the first place and facilitated the bit about how if I contested it, I got nothing. I suspect certain parties to this drama will fry in hell, or are already. It must be a bad feeling knowing you raised that sort of kids. I literally cannot imagine fighting with my sister over money. She has a hard time letting me pick up, like, every fourth restaurant check. I got this weird light catching thing from the oldest principal from my ducking charter school. It came in handy though and saved me and my friends' lives. At least it's better than a golden winged ball, although that did turn out to have an invaluable artifact in it. Best will story I personally know of. The father had a valuable antique grandfather clock. He also had 2 daughters. His solution: if I die on an even day, daughter A gets the clock, an odd day and daughter B gets it. The daughter who did not get the clock got an equivalent cash award based on the value of the clock. I know of the event because I had to service the clock several times over the years. Daughter B has a slightly better chance of getting the clock. An ancestor of mine in the rural UK in the 1700s died and left his farm and everything to his nephew. No children. With his surviving wife only getting the second best bed and a provision her to receive £3 of butter per week for the rest of her life. We thought this was incredibly mean. But we wonder whether this butter was meant as an income. I mean, who can eat £3 of butter? If I remember my history right, the best bed was reserved for the guest room, with the second best bed being put in the master bedroom. Chances are that he was leaving her the bed they had used for most, if not all, of their marriage. Traditionally speaking, the best of everything would go to the children, or in this case, presumably, the nephew, while the widow would get the second best of everything. As well as this, a good bed would be equal in value to that of a small house, though this was mainly for the prosperous citizens. As for the butter, I'd have to go with her having to use it as a form of income. Paula Dean. I wonder how much of that you could actually do without getting charged with desecrating a corpse. Exactly zero. I'm pretty sure law involving corpses is a tricky subject, and I am not a lawyer. But in the US I'm pretty sure upon death your only options, along with organ donation, are burial, cremation, and cryogenic freezing. Edit. No, you cannot do a Viking funeral. No government wants half-burned pieces of dead guy washing up on their public beaches or spoiling their scenic waterways. This screams attention seeking, and not to the plight of animals. Saw someone's moms will get read to them. Her ex-lover got all of her money and she gave her mansion to her son and gave her daughter nothing and said she was a disappointment and a mistake. The kicker was though the kids were twins. I don't think Dee and Dennis count here. Title examiner here. I once reader will where the dissident left his presumably gay son, the 12 feet of rope in my tool shed, so the faggot can do us all a favor and hang himself. His words, not mine. There are some truly terrible people in this world. One of my college buddies' dad died from cancer in our second year. It wasn't a sudden death. He had been battling it for a couple years. When my friend came back to school, he casually mentioned that his dad left him and his sister $7 million each. Turns out, his dad had hit the lottery before my friend was born. Invested, put all the money away to help pay for college, high school. His mom got a nice chunk of change also. He grew up thinking they were just ordinary middle-class family. We had a glorious third and fourth year of college, thanks to my loaded friend. Edit. He did know his dad won the lottery, but it was never mentioned to him or his sister that it was a lot of money. I'm not a lawyer, but my family has an odd story involving a will. Several generations back, a woman, along with her brothers, in our family inherited a huge sum of money from her father, oil money in Oklahoma. At the time, women were allowed to inherit property assets if single, but all assets would have been transferred to her husband if she married. She wasn't too happy about the situation and, in protest, never took a husband. She had a few friends over the course of her life and lived a very comfortable life until dying of old age, at which time, her estate was divided amongst all of the female descendants in the family. TL. DNR. My great aunt of something was a badass feminist beach. Edit. Typos. Not a lawyer, but an estate planning paralegal for many years. I've read, drafted or executed thousands of wills and trusts with clients. My first nitpicky comment is that the common belief that lawyers actually assemble the whole family and hold a reading of the will is entirely a construct of TV. You would never sit there and just read a will to people. It's mostly a bunch of legalese about bonds and payment of taxes and the powers of the executor. Only a very small portion of the will actually pertains to distributions. And in many cases it's just a paragraph stating that everything goes to the spouse if living, otherwise equally to the kids, or to the trust, which then says it all goes to spouse then kids. Believe it or not, they're usually pretty mundane. When strings are attached, it's usually just parents trying to make sure their kids go to college or they get a smaller distribution, or just have to wait longer to get their money. People who don't have kids usually name about 24 beneficiaries, which is cumbersome and annoying, especially since a lot of times they don't even have much money to divide. People with kids almost always just leave the money to them equally, Probably the most ducked up thing I've seen is a couple different clients who included provisions to disinherit kids and grandkids if they married a black person. That's their prerogative, and we'll serve them professionally, but we tended not to get too cozy or chatty at those signings. Unlike with many of the nice clients with whom we would become friendly, just get em in. Get em out in those cases. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.